welcome back to the end of another week. I'm filming a little early because I don't know when our weather is going to come in. But yeah, not much is going on. I did get around to trimming the lantana that was here. I think I have some footage last week, like the freeze basically killed it. So I've cut it down to its stump, which before I was always concerned about, but it grows back no problem. Like all of this was just from last year's growth. And I haven't uncovered my spider plant yet, but in here you can see that like most of it's fine. It did get some frost damage, well, freeze damage, but not too bad. The salvia hot lips looks like it's doing pretty well and gonna come back. Pretty sure my physalis here is also gonna come back. It looks pretty good, but I'll feel a little better once I start seeing some new green shoots on that thing. Up in the garden, not much is happening. I did get my second delivery of horse poop, so that's over there. I got my compost, so that's awesome. And the guy with the mulch has just been kind of on standby while I waited for those other two things to finish delivering. So I should have my mulch hopefully sometime this week if the weather plays nice with us. It's already starting to get kind of windy. The chickens have kind of been put on hold. So the daughter of the neighbors over there has moved back in with her parents. And she came by the other night and was commenting about the chicken coop and mentioning that apparently we have weasels here, which I have zero experience with weasels. So apparently the weasels can get through this chicken wire no problemo. So I'm gonna have to basically redo the chicken coop with this 1/2-inch mesh. So I had kind of started doing some of the things anyway because I ran out of the chicken wire. But yeah, basically I'm gonna take the chicken wire off so I can reuse it for something else. And I'll be putting hardware cloth over the walls and also over the ceiling because the weasels can climb. And yeah, so weasels. Apparently we have weasels. They were also commenting on the foxes, but the foxes really would have to dig, and I've definitely protected from diggers. So I'm not too worried about the diggers, but I am worried about the weasels just squeezing their tiny furry butts through the chicken wire and wreaking havoc on the chickens. Over there, you can't even see it, but I'll come up here. I have gone ahead and planted my willows. So those are all willows. So literally every 30 centimeters along this line, I have my willows, and they end with that one. Yeah, they end with that one. And then from there to where we're gonna put the fence is about 1 meter, which is perfect because ultimately I did want to plant some stuff along here once the chicken fence goes in. So that's still in progress. The mulch is doing pretty well, but you can see that things are already starting to grow. So I'm gonna have to go and like basically manually kind of weed all that. Eventually I'm hoping that the chickens are just gonna kind of weed the space for me, but in the interim, while I'm waiting, I'll have to do that myself. The salvia hot lips that I moved from down there seems to be okay. That one stayed pretty much intact. Something came and dug this one up. But since it still has green stuff on it, I'm hoping it will just root itself and come back, no problem. Out in the garden, yeah, I apologize for the wind. We're expecting a system to come through soon, so I'm out a little earlier to try to get this done. I think I'd mentioned a couple weeks ago that I had found a garden bench that I was going to replace this with, and that didn't work out, so I'm still looking for a garden bench. It is so windy. I started kind of staking out spots here because I was trying to see what's the smallest distance that would work with the new wheelbarrow that I got, because I'll show a picture, but my other wagon completely fell apart. And Francis is going to try to fix it for me, but in the meantime, I got myself a wheelbarrow. And theoretically, 2 feet should be sufficient, or 60 centimeters. But I was in here with the wheelbarrow, and for me and my coordination, that might not be sufficient. But basically, we're looking at creating kind of a perennial garden in this space. So I think I mentioned before that the asparagus is going to go up in here. I have tubers that are going to get planted in the the wine barrels. I know horseradish is going there, and then over here I think it's a combination of like yacon and sunchokes. I started harvesting more of my sunchokes there because I'm emptying out the rest of the green bins here. Because last year I did a combination of the compost and the clay soil, and it's just way too heavy. So I've been dumping that dirt into here to start filling up this bed, and then I will fill these with just compost. There's no point putting clay in it. I'm also going to do the same thing with the potato bags. Eventually all of this dirt will go into that container, and then I will go ahead and keep reusing these bags for the time being with just compost until they completely break down. And I'd mentioned like some of them are already starting to break. So I'm still hoping to use them for another like 1 or 2 seasons, but we'll kind of see. This is my poor geranium that I didn't cover up, and he got super like crispy in the freeze. But down here you can see he's pretty green. So I'm hoping he didn't completely die and that he'll grow back. Like here there's a decent little green bit. But I'll have to cut him down and see what happens. Over here, I have my perennial kale. So it's a combination of Tontondine and Benetton. So those kind of alternate along here. And when I get the mulch, I'll be remulching this area for them, as well as potentially putting some understory plants in there, but I haven't quite gotten that far. Everything else is looking pretty good. The parsley is amazing. I'm actually planning on harvesting a bunch of that and drying it in the new dehydrator. Again, the onions I'm waiting on because they haven't really shown any signs of bulbing, but the garlic here is looking great. And the shallots are looking okay. So we definitely got spoiled with these shallots last year, so I'm really hoping that they do well. For the rest of the garden, I've started taking more of the topsoil off this one to move into here, and eventually I'll start backfilling the other pot as well. So eventually this will be completely flat, and then I'll keep covering it with the compost, so that'll be great. But in the meantime, these other ones I've started refilling with compost because they kind of sink, and I'll throw in a photo. But yeah, they kind of sink every year, so I have to keep refilling them. The wind is insane. I have to keep refilling them with compost, which is fine because you're supposed to top it up anyway. And you can't really see the difference here, but there is like a couple of inches between the lower level and this upper level. So it's non-negligible how much it collapses over the course of the year. So with all the compost that we got, I need to go ahead and open these guys up to look at them. I had opened the aubergines, but their stems were like super squishy, so I'm pretty sure they were dead, so I went ahead and just gave up on them. This guy is a pepper, which might be okay, but that guy is an aubergine, which might be dead. And I had pulled up some aubergines over there, and I don't actually remember if that one's an aubergine or a pepper, but I have a feeling the aubergines just didn't make it. But I did trim down my lemon balm there. So what I may end up doing is kind of digging that up, and then once I put more of the compost down, basically just replanting it in the same place. And then depending on how these guys are, I might do the same thing. So if the pepper survived, I might go ahead and just kind of dig him up and replant him where he is, as is whatever that is. I think it's an aubergine. Also, the nasturtiums, I left some of the roots in the ground. So when I cover them with compost, I'm going to try to at least expose some of the stem, and maybe they'll come back. I don't know, but I have more plants, so I can always just, I have more seeds, so I can always just replant them. And yeah, I basically have to do the same thing with this one. It's hard to tell because it all looks brown, but basically like over here, it's sunk in quite a bit. So I'll have to top that up with soil and then basically kind of give another layer of soil to this whole thing. I had planted like some, I don't know what those are. Cabbage, leeks. I think the Brussels sprouts are over there. They're not really doing much. So I may just do the same thing as I'm doing over here and just like basically slightly dig them up so that they don't end up getting buried with the new compost. Eventually the goal is to have the beds be higher than the paths around them. So like over here, you can tell that at this point, the bed and the path are basically the exact same dimension. And if I dig in here, you can see where I have the barrier, but it keeps getting full. I mean, it keeps getting covered with whoever comes and digs everything. But I have been debating back and forth as to whether or not I was going to keep having like slightly raised beds. And I think I'm leaning towards no. I think I'm leaning towards just having this as kind of like a general guidance barrier, and then just really relying on having a mound of earth in the beds to delineate where the beds are. Or I might do something where I put like rebar stakes at the corners with like lines to mark out where the beds are. I'm definitely not doing the grids. Last year I did these like polyester string grids, mainly because online they're like, oh, if you don't have grids, then you're not doing grid gardening, or if you don't have squares, you're not doing square gardening, which frankly is like a bunch of bollocks. So it's like, if you want grids, that's great. Otherwise, you know, you can pretty much roughly guess what a square foot is, or what a 30 by 30 centimeter square is, and just kind of go with that as like a guidance. I actually created a little, I'll throw in a picture of the tool I made for myself, but I basically used super cheap wooden rulers and stuck them together, and I'm just going to use that to help me like figure out my grids. But I'm not having the strings anymore, because this time of year when I have to like kind of rake it and clean it and add the new compost, having any sort of grid on the beds is just a pain. So yeah, I've taken off all of my strings. I'm not doing that anymore. And that's that. So things to come. I have to obviously like secure my stuff better because the wind is picking it up. This thing is surviving in the wind, which is great. The fig seems to be fine despite not being covered. And the rest of these I did wrap with some jute wrap, which I'll have to remove because pretty soon I'm going to have to spray them with the the dormant oil to help suppress any fungal pest issues that we might have coming into the spring. It's super humid here, so I have a big problem with blight and mildew and all of those fungal type things that love the moisture. The strawberries I'm gonna have to kind of cover. They took sort of a hit in the recent freeze, but you can kind of see that there's a few of them popping up. The passion fruit here definitely took a hit in the freeze, so I'll have to kind of see how he survives. And his buddy over here was always sort of like a failure to thrive. And these guys I did actually get a green thumb guarantee on, so if they don't come back, I can go back to the company and either get a refund or get a replacement. But yeah, he obviously got seriously eaten by stuff, and it's still sort of I don't know if he'll come back or not. He's green, and generally speaking, in my experience, plants really do want to live. So we'll see how he does. But other than that, things that are coming are mainly this space. When we get more mulch, I'm really gonna start remulching this area, prepping the bed down here for the asparagus, getting these wine barrels filled with compost so that I can think about planting those. I've started planting some seeds indoors, so my aubergines soaked, my aubergine seeds soaked for 24 hours. And then I have them planted up in vermiculite to germinate, so hopefully that'll work. Over here, we can kind of see that we have got we've gotten pretty close to freezing, but not actually freezing, so we're gonna clear that for this week. I think, knock on wood, we're actually done with frosts and freezing, because we are in a pretty temperate area. We're gonna reset the water. This has actually been water for a while, but we'll reset that so that we can see what happens next week. Yeah, so I think we're done with frosts. Officially speaking, though, we're not going to be sure until mid-March. So I've started monitoring anytime the evening temperatures get below 0. And that way I can keep track of when we actually have our last frost. But hopefully this year it was mid-January. So other than that, the farmer neighbor was out the other day with his ATV taking samples of the dirt, which I'm sure he sends to a lab to figure out what fertilizer he needs to put on the field. So things are happening there. And other than that, I think that's it for this week. So I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you next week. Bye.